What's up, guys? It is the Bluebloods coming at you with another ACC in 28 days episode. We're wrapping up the month here, and we're joined by the busiest man in the country. He's the host of the Crowded Booth. He's a play-by-play broadcaster for ESPN Plus, ACC Network, and a Georgia Tech insider for 247 Sports. Bryce Koon is joining us today, and I just want to say I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on. You read off that little bio there, and I was like, man, I am pretty busy. It's been a crazy couple weeks, but I'm glad I'm able to come on today.
Yeah, man. I know National Signing Day, everything just wrapped up, so I can imagine how busy. But I want to start with the 2020 season. Yellow Jackets finished 3-7, but as someone who's covered this team on this podcast and stuff, that's actually better than some experts even thought this team could go, especially with the true freshman starting quarterback, Jahmyr Gibbs coming in as a true freshman running back. There was some promise with some players, some big performances. That Florida State win was one of my favorite games of the year to watch, to be completely honest with you. Did this season meet, exceed, or fall short of your preseason expectations?
Well, I would say before COVID hit, we had run like a preview, and so obviously what hurt Georgia Tech was not having the conference games. Now, they probably would have lost to Georgia being a top 10, top 5 team every single year. But I would say just from where we were looking at post-COVID, looking at that conference schedule, honestly, it kind of sat a little bit below. I was maybe thinking maybe a four or five wins, but you talked about that Florida State win. That kind of set the tone and got a lot of fans excited around the program, especially in also us covering them. So I think when you look and you see 3-7, this year's an outlier to me. You got to throw it out because obviously, like you said and you mentioned, you break in a freshman quarterback and a freshman running back tandem that I will say will be one of the most talented in the country by the time they're done at Georgia Tech. I mean, it's a fantastic combination. But 3-7, a win over Florida State, even though that's not the Noles of old, that is more for the branding of Georgia Tech. That was a really big win for them. But I think one that hurt was really that Clemson. Now, Clemson's fantastic, but they're getting beat 73-7 on your home field. Like, you would have liked to see a little more fight out of the guys, but I know that they're geared up and ready because they feel like there were some games last year, and especially the last game of the season for them, which was Pittsburgh, that they saw some missed opportunities. And I'm not saying they're going to be an upper echelon ACC team, but this team could make the rise into the middle of the ranks.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think as bad as it is, I picked them last in the conference to start the preseason because I didn't know what Jeff Sims was going to be. I didn't know that transition from the triple option to the spread went real tough the year before. So I really didn't know what to expect. But that Florida State win, man, like I said, it was one of my favorite games. And then I actually picked them to upset UCF the next week. It didn't pan out, but that's a game I think that you said there's some missed opportunities. Georgia Tech was in that game. Don't let the final score fool you. But I want to get to Jeff Sims. He was one of my favorite freshmen this year. And he went through some growing pains, but like you said, amazing performances. Louisville, Duke, Florida State are 3 games that really stand out for me for him. What do you think of him as a quarterback right now? What would you grade him for this season? And what do you think his potential could be?
Man, potential. I think that he probably has the best potential in the ACC as a quarterback. I mean, what he did down in Jacksonville as a high school talent, and I had the chance to interview him right before he committed to Georgia Tech and signed with Geoff Collins. Remember, this is a guy who was committed to Florida State at one point. So it was kind of crazy that his first college game, he goes and beats the Noles on their home field. But listen, when you talk to Jeff Sims, and he is mature beyond his years. I mean, he doesn't sound like a 17 or 18-year-old kid that steps into the lights of a power conference like the ACC is, and obviously being a Power 5 team. But for me and his development, listen, there were freshman mistakes. There were opportunities that I guarantee you he's going to look in the film, and they've already looked along with his offensive coordinator, Dave Patino, and they've said, listen, you change that, it's a completely different ball game. You make this read right here, and we're probably still driving down the field. And so I think for him, the talent's all there. He has the talent to be one of the best in the ACC before his career is over, like I said earlier. And I think for Sims, it's just going to be growing up. There's no better, and I'll say this, a lot of teams are scared to throw freshman quarterbacks into the fire because you don't want to boost the confidence. To me, you don't want to lose confidence. To me, he never lost confidence. Like, that was one thing that Geoff Collins continued to say, press conference week after week, was, listen, we're getting beat up, but Sims is still stepping up, and every single time we get knocked down, he comes right back up. And for me, a 17-year-old kid playing against Clemson, also adding the fact, like you said, UCF, your only non-conference game is against a top 15 team at that point. Okay, and then you also add Notre Dame into the conference. They were in the college football playoff, so he faced 2 college football playoff teams. And, he didn't have the most inspiring performances, but those 3 games you talked about, that was a glimpse into the future of what I really think this kid can be.
Right. And, moving on to my favorite. So I'm an Auburn fan. I love Tank Bigsby at running back. But listen, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think personally could be the best running back in the country in the next coming years. I mean, he has that type. He reminds me a lot of Trey Mason from Auburn. A few years back from 2013, he's about the same size. He wears the same number. Everything's about him is Trey Mason to me. He didn't get a lot of attempts this year. I would have liked to see him get more carries. I know he was a true freshman. That offense was set up for some other people, but when he was on the field, he popped off the screen for me. What makes him such a good running back? And do you think, that, like myself, that he could be the best running back in the ACC?
Oh, man. Well, listen, I had the pleasure, you go back to Tank Bigsby, of watching him. He went to high school 45 minutes from where I am at Callaway High School. So, I mean, just a phenomenal football player. If Bigsby was not in the picture this season, let's just say that he comes out this recruiting class, to me, Jahmyr Gibbs would receive more notoriety. This kid is an unreal athlete, like you said. And you talk about Trey Mason. I have a bunch of friends that are Auburn fans, and they said, man, he looks like that. He's built like that. Yep. And 2, his ability, when you look at prospects and you want to evaluate them, one thing that we do at 24/7 is like, okay, if he's a running back, can he do multiple things? Can he block? Can he catch the ball to the backfield? Can he, obviously run in between the tackles? Can he bounce it outside? Gibbs, to me, the big thing that he needs to work on is blocking. But that's probably because in high school, he didn't have to do much of blocking. He was the focal point of that offense. But, man, you talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, a fantastic talent. And then he got hurt towards the end of the season. I think that threw a wrench in a lot of the plans. But you talked about the running back room, and I made this claim. I made this claim before the season, and I had some people were like, really? But then they kind of saw it was, we knew Gibbs was going to be good. They have Jordan Mason, who is an all-ACC type running back, whether you want to say second team, third team, whatever. But you look at that just the running backs that they have. I mean, it is unbelievable, that running back room. And I think it's arguably one of the youngest and kind of most talented, underrated in the country. Jordan Mason is a phenomenal talent. He's only going to be a junior this year, technically COVID year. We'll throw however you want to throw that out with his status and everything. But specifically for Gibbs, man, his ability to catch the ball to the backfield, his ability to bounce it out, and then just his awareness. I mean, there were a couple plays going back to that Louisville game. I was at that one, and he makes a play right down the middle of the field, catches one on a little angle route, and then takes it straight down the middle of the field. Now he pulls a hamstring, and that was part of the injury. But you see right there, holy cow! With a combination of Sims, like we talked about earlier, and Gibbs, this could be this could be a special offense. And I preface that in saying Georgia Tech, even though they've run the option, has had some, whatever you want to call in the position, they've had some great running backs in the past, but Gibbs is already kind of living up to the billing.
Yeah, I would say that at least next year with Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter all headed to the draft. I think it's going to be wide open in terms of who's the best running back in the ACC. DeMarcus Bowman transfers, so it's wide open for Gibbs. But I want to go to Geoff Collins, man. He's hired before the 2019 season, tasked with rebuilding this program pretty much from the ground up. I saw significant improvement even first year to second year, and I'm expecting a big leap this year. What do you think of his rebuilding job so far, and why do you think he's the right guy for Georgia Tech?
Well, I've said it since day one. This is not going to be your typical 2 to 3 year rebuild. I mean, you spoke on it earlier. You said that they are moving from the personnel. You have to understand, Georgia Tech didn't have an offensive lineman over about 275 until this past year. They started a freshman at right tackle, and he'll probably switch over. Name's Jordan Williams, in-state product, and he was arguably the best offensive lineman on that team. Why? Because he was about 325, 330. And so when you're playing against ACC opponents, when you play against Clemson, Notre Dame, you think those are physical defensive fronts. So I think that's been the biggest thing. And for especially on Collins, that's been their big thing. They want to get bigger. He doesn't want to lose the guys that were already there, because you want those guys to be bought in as well. And I think it's important because he's done a good job of encouraging them while also having the mindset we've got to get better players. In the state of Georgia, high school football is unreal in the state of Georgia. Okay, so there is so much talent, especially in that Atlanta area, that college is almost taken. And I don't know if you've seen, the marketing, the Waffle House. I mean, the guy walks around with a Waffle House cup every single day and every press conference. And so I think from a standpoint of marketing the program, some people say it's like he's a used car salesman, the sleazy guy. But talking to him, he cares about the program. And you got to remember, too, this is his second go-around at Tech. So he was there as an assistant, big and instrumental in the recruitment of now NFL Hall of Famer. He just got the recognition of Calvin Johnson. So he was really big in the recruitment of Calvin Johnson. So he knows what it takes to see a winning program at Tech. And I think that you talk about the rebuild job. I mean, this is going to be one of those things, and I always point to first ACC fans is, Dabo Swinney didn't really hit the scene and win their national championship with Clemson until about year 6, if I'm correct. So I'm not saying Georgia Tech's going to win a national championship in year 6, but I'm saying this year there needs to be improvement. And I would say by year 4, you should see consistent. Year 5, they should be going to bowl games because this team is talented. They are in a recruiting hotbed. And honestly, when talking to recruits, I got off the phone with one last night, and he had been offered by Georgia Tech, and he said, it's attractive now. The city of Atlanta is a fantastic place to play. I mean, I would stretch this, and I'll even say this. I did not grow up a Georgia Tech fan. I simply just cover them. Going to games now and covering them and having the Atlanta skyline, Bobby Dodd Stadium, and it's obviously without COVID and everything, but it is in a packed out house, man. It's one of the premier venues in college football that I think people don't realize.
Yeah, it definitely is. I was going to talk about that a little bit later too. I mean, because being a graduate from Auburn, I spent a lot of time in Atlanta traveling on the weekends and stuff. And Atlanta is one of my favorite cities. That stadium's awesome. I haven't got to make it to a game. I really want to, but I want to shift to recruiting. I love having people from 247 on because that's my favorite site. I got it bookmarked. I spend all my time looking at recruiting. National Signing Day wrapped up. And before I get to the main class, the thing that popped out for me is 8 transfers landed by Georgia Tech. That's one of the highest in the country. They spent all their time in the transfer portal. They get Kevin Harris from Bama, Kenyatta Watson from, I believe, Texas at DB. How have they been so successful in the transfer portal? And is this a game plan? Was this planned by Geoff Collins to kind of build up this roster by getting experienced guys that are in the transfer portal?
So we talked about the influx of talent at the high school level and what Georgia has to offer. And the guys you just named there, especially leading off with a couple of those guys, they're all from the state of Georgia. He got them to come back home, per se. Kenyatta Watson was at Texas. And like I said, some others at Alabama, others at different schools. They all came back. And so you talk about the transfer portal, which the portal now they're going to have to open a whole nother one because there's so much going on this past year in the transfer portal. But I think when you look and you see what he's been able to do, this kind of was planned. And talking to him, we had a chance to talk to him on early signing day, and then this past one that was the first week in February. And they were quiet, in February. They kind of had their class, and there were maybe some transfers that were going to make last-second decisions. But he said the plan going in is you have to find that balance because with the use of the transfer portal now, you have the ability to give experience or bring in experience immediately. But you don't want to overload that to where it's just a bunch of guys that don't really know each other and the chemistry's not there. So I think he has the balance of there's some very talented kids that are becoming in as true freshmen. But like you pointed out, there's some very talented guys. And I'm going to get a name of one guy that I'm really excited to see. And that was Kyrick McGowan from Northwestern. He's a wide receiver. Jackets they lose some wide receivers this past year, but when you add a guy in who can make an immediate impact and a veteran receiver, he's played in the Big Ten. He knows what it takes, and also that helps usher in, help for a young quarterback. I mean, Sims played the whole season, but he's only going to be playing in year 2. And remember that freshman year, he didn't get a full camp. So the transfers, it kind of eases the pressure on a lot of those young guys that may be making debuts or first starts or stuff like that.
Right. And I mean, I think the transfer portal has become a bigger and bigger thing. You're going to see every single team in the country get pretty much trading players back and forth. And, to the main part of the class, 47th overall, it continues a strong recruiting start. I believe they had a top 25 class last year. Georgia Tech did on 247. What were the biggest needs for the Yellow Jackets this cycle? And who are some players that you're looking to contribute immediately as true freshmen?
Yeah, the Jackets continuing to try to, reach out, control the city of Atlanta, but also reach in other ways. And if you go down and look at that class, there's some big faces. One for me was a guy who's just down the road in Jonesboro from Trinilius Tatum. He's a linebacker. He can play inside or outside. This guy is going to provide, I think, immediate help. If he's not starting, he's going to be playing special teams. And as you know, obviously you watch college football, the greats, and I'm pointing to Nick Saban. Where do all those 5-stars start? They start on special teams. Okay, they make their impact there. And Collins, kind of, I feel like everyone's under the Nick Saban coaching tree, but there's a little bit of ties with Collins and Nick Saban. But when you look and see these, like a guy like Tatum, for me as an inside linebacker, he's going to get the opportunity to, play kickoff coverage, play punt coverage, stuff like that, and make an immediate impact. You go down the list, a guy for me, another one is Jahmyr Gibbs. This is a guy who's 6'6", 305 pounds. He's a left tackle out of Westlake High School in Atlanta. Now, listen, if you'd have told me 3 years ago Georgia Tech was going to have a 6'6" offensive lineman, I was like, yeah, maybe he's trying to play basketball first, and then he's just going to wander onto the flats for football. But they need help offensively on the line. And that was one thing. You talked about Sims. We talked about him. They've got to keep his jersey clean. He had great poise, and he has the ability to make plays with his feet. But you know as well as I do, that's only going to last for so long. There's some great quarterbacks that you have to have a great offensive line around them. So when I saw, Jahmyr Leftwich come in offensive lineman, and then going back, they brought in a transfer from Mississippi State, Nick Penley, who's a guard and has SEC type of experience. Those are big pickups. So those two for me, Leftwich and Tatum. And then I'll throw in one more for you, Shaden Peary. Now, this guy is a pro-style quarterback out of California. Didn't even have his senior year of high school football due to COVID. So he hasn't played in 2 years. But when I talked to him, we did a great piece on 24/7 on GoJackets.com, and talking about this whole offseason, he was trying to recruit, and he was kind of the lead recruiter. Typical classes will sometimes for schools, they'll have that. Over in Athens, Brock Vandegrift was that for Georgia this past year. Right. But I think when you see and you look exactly what Peary was for this, he's probably not going to push Jeff Sims for a starting job, but just what he was able to do to build the class, whether it was there, staying up late playing video games with guys on the East Coast to build that chemistry before they came into campus. So with Sims, let's get past Sims. Peary he has leadership type mentality for this team, and I guarantee you, a great athlete, great competitor. He will push. He will indeed push Sims for the job. Not saying he'll win it though. Jeff Sims Jeff Sims to me has to show that he would absolutely lose the job before something would happen.
Right, and I think you said that as a true freshman. Auburn brought in people behind Bo Nix, but it's ultimately his job to lose. And looking ahead to 2022, the Jackets already have Antonio Martin in the bag. That's a top 250 recruit at running back. Who are some of the biggest targets that we should look for? Like, who's at the top of the board for the Yellow Jackets in this next recruiting cycle?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I want to speak on Antonio Martin real quick because that kid is special, real quick. We talked to him, and Tashard Choice, the running backs coach at Georgia Tech, a legend of the flats, they call them. He was phenomenal in the recruitment. So Antonio Martin's a good one. Let me come into some more for you, and I just interviewed, so I got to get the name down for you. And Martin's one of those guys that he is going to be the lead recruiter for a lot of these guys. And I think, too, when you look and see how the class shakes out, there's great talent. But one for me is going to be Antonio Kite. He's a linebacker out of Anniston, Alabama. He's a 2022 guy. Now Rivals has him as a 4-star, 24/7 still, because they're doing that. They do the composite rating. They're still trying to update all of that. But to me, talking to Kite, he has and whether it's a committable offer or not, to Alabama, he's getting looked at by Georgia. Auburn's looking at him. A&M, Florida State. But Georgia Tech jumped in early on Antonio Kite. And they, we talked about what they were trying to address offensively this past class. Now they're going to turn attention to defense because if you can't stop anybody, it doesn't matter. Okay, you know what I mean? So I think Antonio Kite for me is going to be a real big one to see see how he progresses, honestly. Another one is cornerback Jordan Allen. This is a guy from Louisiana who is a 4-star right now. Would not be surprised to see him get his 5th star before he before he even kicks off his senior year this fall. Allen is a prototypical big corner. He stands about 6'1", 6'2". He's only 185, but you got to think he could probably grow a little bit more once you get into a college weight room and lifting program at a D1 program. So Jordan Allen, Antonio Kite, those are two guys that could make. And honestly, with Allen, he's a guy who probably could come in and make. And it's no knock on Georgia Tech's corners. It's just he would make an immediate impact. Maybe not line up against the number one. He's not going to line up against Justin Ross at Clemson. I'll tell you that. But I mean, he's a guy who he can be a difference maker as a freshman. So, Kite and Allen are two guys for me in 2022 that are really big defensive needs for Georgia Tech.
Right. I mean, you speak on, coming in and impacting immediately. I think we're seeing more and more coaches be willing to give younger players an option. I mean, North Carolina started a high school senior in Tony Grimes, who graduated early. This kid doesn't even barely has his high school degree, and he's going out there making plays for the Tar Heels. So it happens so often. But looking ahead to this next season, I'm just going to say I'm sorry because this schedule is brutal. This is a disgusting looking schedule if I'm a Georgia Tech fan. I mean, road games at Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. You have the Georgia game, which you always have. North Carolina, Virginia Tech are also on there. They're both going to be really good teams next year. Where do you see the must wins? And do you see Tech being able to pull off a huge upset this year against one of these powerhouses they have on the schedule?
You just made it really tough on me. Okay. So I got the schedule right here in front of me. I would roll with, those first two games you're going to have Northern Illinois, which is a good MAC program. I mean, they have a good MAC program. I think Georgia Tech should be able to win that. And then we'll say crosstown rival and Kennesaw State will come. Yeah. Listen, Kennesaw State is an FCS powerhouse. Like, they run the triple option, and we saw 2 years ago, Georgia Tech invited the Citadel in, and Citadel beat them. So I'm not going to, I don't want to say. But to me, those are 2 wins. The tough part is at Clemson, and then you turn around and come back home. You're going to be playing at Mercedes-Benz, actually, which is a part of an agreement Georgia Tech has with the Benz for the next couple of years. But you have North Carolina. Okay, so those are back-to-back. I think when you look at what are some must-wins, it would not – if Georgia Tech could find themselves 5 wins – this year, I would feel good about that. You want to win that October 2nd game against Pitt because you play at Clemson, then you come home against North Carolina. You've got to win that game against Pitt because you don't want to start a slide that could just continue the rest of the season. So if you win that game versus Pitt, and then you go to Duke, which, Georgia Tech obliterated Duke offensively this year, and Duke's kind of on the down. Chase Bryce transfers out after only 1 season. Let's just roll and say they win those first 2 games. And then they lose at Clemson and come home and North Carolina and lose. But then they beat Pitt at home, not out of the question. Then they go to Duke and win them and win that game. They have a bye week before the rest of their season, and they're sitting at 4-2. I would have to feel good about getting at least 1 win. Maybe it's against Boston College. Listen, Georgia and Notre Dame, I'm going to throw those out the window unless Notre Dame's quarterback situation is crazy with Ian Book leaving. Right. And then obviously you throw back in Georgia. I mean, Georgia Tech, and you're an Auburn fan. I love talking to Auburn friends about this. Auburn, to me, has one of the hardest schedules every single year in college football because they play everybody in the West, and then they'll play Georgia, and then sometimes they'll draw Florida. Yeah. But also Georgia Tech does too. They're playing the best in the Clemson, or they're playing the best in the ACC in Clemson because that kind of traditional rivalry, and then they pull a top 5 Georgia every single year. So that's the key part of the schedule for me, honestly, is if they can win Pitt and Duke, you're sitting at 4-2 heading into a bye week. You get rested, and then you come back and you go on the road at Virginia. I'm not saying it's a winnable game. I'm not saying it's a must-win game, but they could find themselves with maybe a 5 to maybe 6 win season to me. But that's if all the pieces are correct, and obviously injuries would come into play as well.
Right. Yeah. The injury bug. You can't have a good season with the injury bug hit. We've seen teams loaded. I mean, Oklahoma State this year had a bunch of stuff, and then Spencer Sanders goes down like the 3rd play of the game, and they have to throw in a true freshman. So you never know. But speaking of that, so if it's sticking with 2021, who are some players that could really shine this year and that you think will have breakout years in 2021?
Oh, well, I was going to say Sims and Gibbs, but those we already talked about those. When you look at this roster, there is a lot of skill position talent. And typically when you want to build a team, coaches say they want to build it from within and then go out. Georgia Tech kind of has the opposite because they have the talent, and trust me, they have the talent on the outside with receiver, tight end. But what's lacking is just the interior. And so I'm going to pick out one guy, and he's actually a freshman. He's actually a freshman. I'll go two guys because he's actually Tariq Carpenter for me. He's just going to be a senior safety / kind of cornerback position. He may play a little bit of star in that defense if they'd elect to go with that this year. But when you look at what Tariq Carpenter can provide, it's going to be stability in the back end of the defense. He battled some injuries this year. He comes back, and he's a safety that stands at about 6'3", 215. That's a big safety. Like that's a big guy, and he's a physical, imposing type of player. I really, really like him. Another one for me, Quez Jackson, linebacker. This guy led the team in tackles. He's going to have to replace and kind of slide into more of a starting spot with obviously David Curry leaving, Georgia Tech legend. Feel like he's been there for like 15 years. But I think those 2 guys defensively for me are going to be kind of where you see it kind of where you honestly see the difference makers. If those guys step up in a leadership role this season and they are able to, take that step as a senior and junior in that group, then I feel great about it. But a freshman for me is going to be a guy named Leo Blackburn. This is a guy who has drawn comparisons, and he'll be a rising freshman. He's coming out of the class. He's drawn comparisons to a Kyle Pitts type of player. He can line up in the slot and line up as a tight end. He dominated in the Florida-Georgia high school all-star game, had 2 touchdown catches. One of them, he absolutely mossed this kid. And so for a good thing for Georgia Tech fans is they know that the Bulldogs had a lot of trouble with Kyle Pitts. So that might give them a little bit of relief there. But Leo Blackburn offensively could add a whole nother dimension because we talked about if the offensive line takes that step up, we talked about receiver. This guy, he's my day one contributor. There's no way that he's not on the field in some type of personnel package offensively. And so I think Leo Blackburn offensively, then Quez Jackson and Tariq Carpenter defensively, those guys will take a step up in leadership as seniors and juniors.
Hey, I like it. You kind of answered like what your thoughts, like what you would say, like 5 wins is probably like your prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can get past that Pitt game. I got to put you on the spot here, man. Ceiling and floor for this 2021 team. Like if everything goes right, what are we looking at? But if the injury bug hits, everything goes wrong, what could happen in 2021?
All right, I'll go with we'll go negative news first, get it out of the way, okay?
Yeah.
Negative news comes a week before they're supposed to play Northern Illinois. Jeff Sims goes down with an injury. Now they have Atlanta guy Jordan Yates, who's a talented kid, not as great of a thrower as a passer as Jeff Sims. And I'll use those 2 terms. There's a difference between being a good passer and a thrower. Throwers are guys that got away with that talent in high school, and that's not knocking players at all. It throws a lot better than I did in high school. But I think when you see if Sims, there's a little bit of a drop-off, okay? So quarterback goes away with an injury, and then there's the injury bug kind of bites the running back, and offensive line doesn't take that step up. Man, 3 wins. I'd have to go. I'd have to go 3 wins. I'd say that they would probably beat those first 2 teams on the schedule. And I'll go 3 wins and get blasted by Clemson. You don't want to get blasted again, but that's the floor. So 3 wins. I don't know if they would do any worse than that. Let's hope not. It's not fun to cover teams like that, but we'll see. Not. The ceiling. Okay, so the ceiling with this, I'm going to roll with, and I'm going to get a little crazy here. Jeff Sims makes this ascension to a star, okay? He doesn't have the sophomore slump, okay? He rises to the occasion, all the prep work, a full offseason with coaches and everything helps him. Jahmyr Gibbs rises to, let's just say he's an all-ACC back, receives some All-American honors. I'm not going to say they're going to go to New York and go to the Heisman Trophy ceremony, but these are guys that we kind of see on the national stage. I'll go with 7 wins, 7 or 8 wins, and your only losses would be, or let's roll 8-4. That to me, that's best case scenario. Kennesaw State, you win that one, obviously those 2, but you lose to Clemson, North Carolina, Georgia, and Notre Dame. Those are not bad losses. They're all top 25 teams. They're all teams that feel like that they could win their conference or make a playoff push this upcoming season. 8-4, and dare I say you might steal one from North Carolina at home, playing in Mercedes-Benz. You know it's going to be a rowdy crowd if they let some fans in there. So I would say 8-4, 9-3, and that is like if Jeff Sims looks like, the second coming of Joe Montana. I don't even know. You got to throw some great quarterback out there. But they could take a step up, and if they do and things play right and that offensive line gels and they look like a cohesive unit, this could be a very scary team. But like you said, we could play this what-if game all day. It's going to come down to injuries, and it's going to come down to some execution. But it should be an exciting season for Jacket fans.
Yeah, I'm so excited. This is a team, I'll always watch my Auburn Tigers play, but this is a team, I will always put on my schedule to watch. Last year it was North Carolina. I watched every North Carolina game. Mm-hmm. I was so enamored with Sam Howell in that running game. But Georgia Tech's going to be one of those teams this year. But I want to shift to something you talked about earlier, the environment of Atlanta, the environment of Bobby Dodd Stadium. What makes this, university and that stadium so unique on game days? And why do recruits want to come play at Georgia Tech?
Well, I'll say first off, like we talked about with Collins and the program, and a lot of credit to Tashard Choice. This is a guy who was a Georgia Tech legend, comes back as a coach, much like, and we've had this conversation, much like Cadillac Williams has come back to Auburn and invigorated, if I was Tank Bigsby and I saw Cadillac Williams, I'm like, yeah, I want to go play for that guy. That's Cadillac Williams, him and Ronnie Brown and Jason Campbell. I'll throw it out there. I used to be a big Auburn fan. I used to be a massive Auburn fan. So that's why I know those names. But much like that has done things for Auburn, Tashard Choice has changed the culture. He's made coming to Georgia Tech cool. You have everything from, just their branding. Waffle House. I mean, everyone loves Waffle House. Who didn't go play a high school football game and then go to Waffle House afterwards, especially if you live in the South?
Right.
So I think when you see what they've been able to do from a branding standpoint and making it fun. Now, that is no knock against Paul Johnson's Georgia Tech years. That team won an Orange Bowl against Dak Prescott and Mississippi State. Like that, those were some great teams. But kids are now seeing the ability to go to the next level. There's an opportunity. It's no longer, well, Calvin Johnson did it, but who else? Or Demaryius Thomas did it, but really who else? Athletes, and I'm telling you, they're a dime a dozen. You go down to Atlanta, you show me 10 high school players, I can probably say about 8 of them are going to go play at the next level. It's a talented group in the state of Georgia. So they've made it cool, the marketing from the program, and then you talk about academically. I mean, Georgia Tech is one of not only best programs, the best academic schools in the country, it's in the world. I mean, like the connections too beyond the game of football. We've talked with a lot of kids, and they've said, Choice and Coach Choice and Geoff Collins tell them it's not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision. We have all the connections for job opportunities if football doesn't work out. I mean, Fortune 500 companies. I mean, you think of City of Atlanta, you have Coca-Cola. I mean, right? I mean, like who? I mean, it's massive brands are in the city of Atlanta. So I think when you wrap all of that up into a vibrant city like Atlanta, it's a commuter city, but it's a diverse city. There's a lot going on in the city of Atlanta. What kid is going to say, you know what, I don't want to, I'll go live in Atlanta and live the high life and be a big time athlete. And I'm telling you, I'll say this. I don't know if you post clips of this when you share it on social media, but this would be a perfect one.
Okay.
If Georgia Tech makes the rise to what we'll say an elite program, they will be up there for a long time because the city of Atlanta, the resources that the city has, Georgia Tech smack dab in the heart of the city. Like I said, looking out over the skyline, seeing the Coca-Cola sign. I mean, I'm telling you, you hadn't been to a game, you need to get to one because it's one of the most phenomenal atmospheres. They played the Louisville game on a Thursday night, and it was crazy. And it was a COVID crowd. I mean, there was not even that many people there, but it felt like it was your typical Thursday, Saturday night game. And I'm telling you, man, if they make that rise and make that jump and Collins gets them there, they're going to be at it for a long time because they're a sleeping giant. Like that program is a sleeping giant. It was always if they got the right guy and they were able to market it, then I'm telling you that they'd raise the level of play and competition there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think everyone talks about Florida, Texas, California. I think Georgia has passed California in terms of just pure football talent. I mean, especially that Atlanta area. You just go down the list of schools. You mentioned Tank Bigsby from Callaway. I'm blanking now, but Jake Fromm's program that he came from, they turn out D1 talent year in, year out, every year. Cam Newton's from the Atlanta area. There's just been so many people that have come out of there. But now I just want to end this off here. Last question, man. You've called some of the great, exciting games. What has been your favorite, most memorable moment since you've been covering Georgia Tech?
Okay, so I got 2 for you. One of them is going to be it was a football game, and it was a spring game. First time Collins is there. It's a packed out crowd. This is my first spring game covering Georgia Tech. So we're all there, and Georgia Tech lines up. And, spring games are kind of like it's a glorified scrimmage. Like no one's really hitting each other. And the first play, they throw a pass to the tight end. Well, a tight end had not been on the roster for like 10 years at Georgia Tech, and the fans go crazy. It's a forward pass, and it was fantastic. So that was a really, really cool moment. And then I'll throw in another one. So that was cool. Covered the Louisville game this year, and just watching what this offense could be and what this team could be was a great one. Another great one was actually basketball. Georgia Tech's basketball program has a fun one. They played Kentucky this year. Now, obviously, Kentucky is not what they usually are in basketball, but they were able to beat them in State Farm Arena in downtown Atlanta. So that was a really cool moment as well. But, yeah, man, listen, Georgia Tech has the potential to be off the charts with some of the moments that they have. And I wasn't there. I was at the game, but I did not cover it. I was not working for 24/7 at the time. But not the kick six that you all remember with Auburn fans, but the other one where Florida State tried it and it was blocked and they pick it up and run it. I mean, and they beat a top 25 Florida State team. And dare I say it, that was kind of where we saw Florida State kind of fall off the map after their national championship in 2013. And that was crazy. And I'll tell you one thing, from the environment, holy cow. I mean, Bobby Dodd, that is the loudest I've ever seen Bobby Dodd Stadium on that night. So I didn't cover that one. That was a great moment. But the spring game, that's always a fun one because they throw the forward pass and everyone loses it like they just won the national championship. But it was the first time they'd seen a pass to a tight end in 10 to 15 years.
Right. Oh man, yeah, I'm so excited. I just was so caught up in going to Auburn games when I was a student. I'm kicking myself for not going to Bobby Dodd one weekend, but next time I'm down there, man, I'm definitely looking forward to go. I've been in the stadium, like seen the stadium being in Atlanta. It's one of the coolest designs, I think, the way they have it built up, and you feel like you're enclosed. Like you see the skyline, but you feel like you're in the stadium when you're there. And man, I definitely appreciate you taking time. I'm gonna give you a chance to plug everything. I know you do a lot of stuff, got a lot of cool stuff out there. I went back and listened to some of the crowded booths and everything. Great job there, man. But I'm gonna let you plug everything. Let everyone know where to find you.
Yeah, so mostly find me on Twitter. Don't look me up on Facebook or anything like that. I will probably not accept your friend request unless it's from you, Zach. I'll accept that one, but random listeners maybe not. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Bryce_Koon. We are putting out content. I have so much. It's kind of crazy to determine what it is. But then at the crowded booth, man, I love that. That is kind of. It started off as a one-man podcast and has grown into kind of this thing where we have podcast live shows every Tuesday night and Thursday night. So I'm gearing up for that one later tonight. And then we also provide some local high school coverage. I'm based out of Atlanta, but my hometown is Columbus, Georgia. And so very big, right there on the river, right there close to Auburn, about 30 minutes away, just across the Chattahoochee River. So ton of high school talent in there. We do a lot of recruiting stuff that I kind of do just with my gig down there. But yeah, man. And then obviously broadcasting as well. That's where the passion is, and that's where the love is. And so we got some games coming up that are going to be a ton of fun, and I'm excited to do that. But yeah, just go give those a follow. And Zach, I appreciate it, man. This has been a ton of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, y'all, so make sure to go follow, subscribe to all that stuff. Y'all know where to find us, man. We'll be back. Our last ACC in 28 days is coming up later this week with Virginia Tech, guys. But for right now,